Today, we're 4 weeks away from the National, and we're going to be here telling you all about it and talk about it. Let's get it. What's up, guys? We're back, and today we're here, and we're going to talk about the National Sports Card Convention, which is 4 weeks away here. We will all be going this year, which is very exciting. It's in Chicago this year, and it will be for the next 3 years. And personally, from being there the last 3 years, Chicago is definitely the best location for the National, with all the space, the dealers, and all of the events that happen. I think this year is going to be one of the best years for the National that the hobby's ever had. Now we're here, and I do want to, we have a lot of different opinions here. A lot of people went to different shows. I'll go to Nate here because I know he's been to Dallas and different card shows around the world. Now, say, how does those kind of card shows compare towards like a national fair?
Yeah, so the Dallas card show, I went to Dallas last year. I went to FanFest 2 weeks ago, and both of those shows are really big. There's 200 plus tables. There's thousands of people walking the room every single day. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars being spent, being sold, and I've never been to the National, but seeing how well Dallas and FanFest was being ran, I have huge expectations for the National because a lot of the dealers that I was doing deals with, they're like, yeah, FanFest, Dallas, they're great, but you gotta see the National. And not only that, but I'm excited for the SoCo Expo within the National. Because I'm a soccer collector myself, so I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, no, I am very excited. I do think the one difference from Dallas and the National is how much bigger it is. There's a ton more tables, and some of them obviously will be vintage, but there's a lot of high-end stuff. And they always say if you're trying to find a car, you're gonna find it at the National most likely, because that's where everything's gonna be, high-end, low-end, just everything. You'll find it at the National. Now, I'm over at you, Anthony. You've been to Chicago the last time it was there with me, and you went to Cleveland. So, judging off of, I know Cleveland was a bit disappointing, if you want to say, with the convention. I know we really liked, Chicago. What do you want to see from Chicago and an upgrade from Cleveland? Like, what do you want to see from there?
Well, I know Chicago is definitely going to have way better dealers. It's definitely going to be way nicer.
More convenient?
More convenient for sure, because we're going to have a hotel right next to it this time,
sure.
thank God. We don't have to spend all the money on Ubers.
Well, I think that from Cleveland, how it wasn't big enough to hold the amount of people that was there.
Cleveland was definitely way smaller. They had the room too. You remember when we went to go find the bathroom? They had a bunch of rooms, but they did not use any of them. The food also wasn't good.
Yeah, I remember when we were, back in 2022 when we were at Chicago, we would go and find a new section every day.
New section every day.
Every day there was here's another 150 tables just hidden. And it's like, it's not just an open floor. It's like, it's like a map, which is, pretty cool. And I think that holds the capacity. Now, I know you also went to Cleveland, and this will be your first time at Chicago. What are we expecting?
I mean, from what I've heard from you, from your experience, and you too, Anthony, with your experiences at Chicago, it sounds like incredible. I mean, especially because I've been to Atlantic City, went to Cleveland with you guys. I mean, those shows were alright. Granted, obviously, they're amazing, but in terms of nationals, especially from comparing it to what I've heard about Chicago, they were kind of just alright. They're mediocre. Obviously, I personally think Cleveland was better than Atlantic City, but from what I've heard about Chicago, and not even just about the cards, but how big of just an experience it is, seeing all these celebrities and all these big athletes just walking around the show floor. It just sounds incredible.
Yeah, that's also, good point there at Chicago. We saw a lot more athletes just on the show floor, and that's something like a fan fest type of, vibe. Now, I'll go to you two for this on, what is it like, for people who just going the first time, what is it like walking into the National on that first day? What emotion are you having? What goes through your mind, and how do you start to all right, let's get to work, let's start,
Yeah. So for me, I've kind of settled into not being too overwhelmed by it. I mean, I'm kind of used to the national setting and the scale of how big and important of a show it is. And that actually, personally, I think it makes going to other card shows, smaller ones compared to the national, like FanFest, a lot easier, because I feel like having the experience of a national kind of just helps you overall in the hobby in general.
Now, for people going, we'll give you some tips and tricks later, but for people going, there's a ton of events. You mentioned one, I'll let you expand on that in a second, but there's a ton of events there that go on throughout the show, after the show, before the show, all day long. I know you have one that you're gonna say.
The SoCo Expo, which is an exclusive soccer show that I know a lot of the people were complaining that there wasn't enough soccer within the show floor in the National a few years back.
I actually did think the first time that started was actually in Chicago last year.
Really?
Yeah.
And now it's so amazing how they're starting a new show from 6 to 10 p.m. I believe, right after the main show. But it's going to be exclusive soccer in the basement, and there's going to be, I believe, 100-something tables for just exclusive soccer stuff.
And a lot of stuff are high-end.
Yeah, a lot of high-end, Yamal, Messi, Ronaldo, Neymar's.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited for that. And when you're talking about events, it reminds me of different trade nights that will also be happening, such as I know Card Collector 2 will be probably having a trade night.
Yeah, they all host trade nights, and what I did like about the National, each year they find a way to progress in a different way, and that was trade night last year. They went from only having one night, because remember that we only had one night when we went to Chicago. We had one night of trade night, which we went to. It was like really good, but it was packed, and the room they have it in is in like this ballroom, like wedding area, right? That's upstairs, like over the National, right? Like on top of it, and it only held a certain amount of people. So they started not letting people in. So it was like when we got there a little late, but when we got there was lines, and they were like, you're not letting anyone in until someone comes out, max capacity. And I remember just people just on the floor, like outside, because there's a huge area, just setting up outside and having their own trade night there. Fortunately we got in, and it was amazing. But what I liked about it is now that there's not one day, there's 3 days of trade night. For us three that were going to the soccer, right? Maybe the first day we don't have to go to the trade night. We can spend all day at the soccer, and then the next day we're at trade night. Because you did all that soccer, right? And then the third day, if you go for third day, you could pick which one you want to go to, which one you really feel the need to go to, which is really cool. Now, for people going, right, and they've never been, let's give them some tips and things to, things to go in knowing. I'll start personally. I always say, and I always tell people, be prepared. When you go there, if you're first time, definitely be prepared, because it's huge. It's the biggest one in the world. So I would say be prepared. Have a list of stuff that you want. Whatever you can fit in your budget, right? Have a list of cards you're looking to go, because I promise you, once you get in there, you're going to see so many different cards, and you're going to be like, I want that. If you have a list, it gives you a general idea on what to stick by, of what you're trying to look for. And I always say, leave a little room in that budget for something you're never going to expect to put on that list. You may see an unbelievable card that you've never seen before online, or you've just never even thought of that you would want, and it's right there. And that's why I say, leave a little bit of room.
Going off what Antonio said, Chicago 2 years ago was my first Nationals, and it was honestly, the second I walked in, I wasn't really expecting that. Tone was hyping it up, and that was also when I first started collecting, basically, so I didn't have a list, I didn't have anything, and I was kind of lost when I first walked in. Thankfully I had Tone, because kind of guided me through everything. But you know, I still don't make a list when I go. I kind of just do it on the fly because I feel like I can't make up my mind with the list. But
I think you do players. Which
yeah,
you also do.
I mainly do players, but
He lists players of what he would want in
when
some
you
cards.
when you go, you're obviously gonna see a bunch of cards that like you have on your list or that you want, but you don't wanna wait too long on them, but you also don't wanna buy them right away. You wanna try and look at everything, so you can try and like get the best prices. Maybe you'll find something even better that you'll like.
Yeah, that's 100%. That's also another good trick that, you know, you don't have to blow your budget on day one. If you're going, you know, if you're going on 2, 3 days, 4 days, whatever, you don't have to spend it on the first hour. I like to say, I try to at least walk the show floor once, and I usually do it. We walk the show floor at least once day one.
Yeah.
And I would say I'd probably do that before I pick up anything huge. You know, like you'll see some minor stuff and you're like, all right, I'll pick that one up along the way because I like it. You know, but then, you know, once you walk around, you see what you like. That's when you're like, all right, make up your mind and go get the card that you like.
And I also wouldn't be too worried about it because like, let's say your first walkthrough, you might see like 8 cards that you wanted, but like maybe like 1 out of the 8 will be gone by the time you look at it again. But like the other 7 will be there, so you're only gonna really miss out on like 1, let's say.
Yeah.
So they're gonna go, but you don't have to worry about it too much.
Yeah, so for me, actually, my first ever card show was the National in Atlantic City, and it was around when I first started collecting, and me and Tone, we prepped for probably about half a year, just trying to get me ready for this because I was just new to the hobby. And a tip I will give is that prepare to be overwhelmed. Whatever you think this show is going to be, it's actually 10 times that. It's the biggest show on the planet.
Yeah.
And if it's your first time and you think FanFest was big, like expect 10 times that. It's huge. And going off of what you said with the list, I definitely agree with that. Definitely make a list, but don't always like stick to it. Don't be extremely rigid and say, okay, this stuff's on my list. I'm gonna get this, this, and this. I can't go off the list. That is not this type of show. This is the type of show where you're gonna see so much stuff, and it's like it could be a one-time opportunity for you to get this card. It's like if you pass it up, you might not ever see it.
You may see a 1 of 1 that you're like, oh wow, or you may see a gold, or you know, out of 5 that you're like, I've never even seen that card. Oh, I've only seen it on Instagram where someone posted it for their PC. Right? That's the deal with soccer. You see a ton of high-end stuff with soccer just on Instagram and it says not for sale, which is like really annoying. But like you're gonna see all those cards.
Yeah.
Maybe not that specific, but like those type of cards there. What do you got?
For me, I've never been to the National, but I can speak on behalf of other shows.
Yeah.
And on the more business aspect side of sports cards, for people trying to like make a few bucks, I'm gonna take this from Roth cards. You never go broke taking a profit, even if it's just a little bit. Or maybe you think you want to hold it, you want to hold the card, and you think you're gonna wait so long, wait a month, and then the card's gonna shoot up in price. But the National, football will be really hot. So if you decide to buy football and then hold it, you might see a downturn if, let's say, JJ McCarthy doesn't play well in the season. So if someone gives you a good offer and you're making profit, I would advise you to take that profit.
Now, you mainly do a lot of flipping when you go to these shows.
Mm-hmm.
How do people do that at the National? What percents are we buying at in order to make money? Like you said, obviously you said profit isn't, if you could have a little profit, you still take it.
Yeah.
And what are like the types of cards people should be buying in order to expect to flip?
Yeah, so especially this summer, I would recommend this year's QB class. So Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy, all those QBs would be insane sells. And then in terms of soccer, I would suggest Lamine Yamal, obviously.
This stuff has gotten like
out of
really
control.
Yeah.
And then this is why you have to turn it quick, or else if you hold it too long,
you may still have a little bit of small margin with that World Cup coming up. That's why it's like, even though the prices, you look at a nice card and you see the price is like, wow.
Yeah.
That I remember that was $1,000 less
A
6 months ago.
Yeah.
But it's like it seems absurd, but even though you still have a small profit margin just because of well.
Yeah, when you're talking about margin, it's not really, you don't really have a set margin when you're buying. Like, yes, you might have a percentage base that you want to pay, but if it's a really nice card, if it's a really rare card, then maybe you should be paying a little bit higher for that card. For example, let's say it's a very rare Lamine Yamal card. You're not going to be paying your normal percentage based on the cards that you usually buy. You're going to have to pay up a little bit. So never fear that like you're overpaying. If you think you can move it, then you should pull the trigger on that card.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I did want to mention that the National does offer in events. They have a lot of cool opportunities, I would say, that they have other than cards or about cards too, where they offer the autograph panel, right? A lot of shows have it, but you look at the National. I know it's not the big names as FanFest, but like they have Hall of Fame signers there, that are signing. So if you are big into getting autographs, that's definitely a place to go. That they have that opportunity. I would just say know your time and day. Your guy's gonna be there and get there early. Another thing that we did, or I think I did maybe, is the Topps exclusive silver packs.
Oh, yeah.
That's one thing every year.
Last year, you remember?
I did it last year.
You did?
I didn't get anything, but that's one thing that is crazy about the National that everyone goes crazy about is the silver packs. You may have a fun time with this.
They were having the soccer ones when we
They
were
have
there.
soccer.
That's why we didn't do it.
So the silver packs, for people who don't know, is right before the National, Topps drops a list of how to redeem these silver packs. And these silver packs go by sport, so you get to choose what sport you want. If you want baseball, football, basketball too, they have each different sport. Sometimes they make it mixed too, but they will say you have to go to one of these dealers that will be selling wax, and you have to buy one of these boxes. It has to be this specific box again. Now you buy your box for $100, whatever it costs, right? You walk it over to not PSA, Topps. You walk it over to Topps. You stand in line, and I would suggest if you're doing this, you do it early because they do run out for the day. They only have specific amount for the day. So you walk it over to Topps, and you wait online, and once you give it to the Topps employee, they'll check off the box, right? They'll give you the box back, so you get the box, and they'll give you 2 silver packs. Depending on what type of box, you could get 2, you could get 4.
Yeah, like the more expensive ones.
It really depends on
packs.
each box. Some you get 1, right? It just depends on which type of box you have. But the thing that everyone goes crazy about the silver packs is it's not a big checklist, right? We saw people going and pulling crazy cards, right? Because there's not millions of packs, right? So your odds of pulling a really good card. They have autos. They had Lamine Yamal autos. They had Messi autos last year, right? Wemby was in it, so
the big cards they hit.
They have stars, and Caitlin Clark was in it for Panini. Panini also has this type of stuff where you're more than likely to pull a high-end card, right? That will sell for a good amount of money while you're at the show, just because your odds of how many packs are made, they're definitely way better than just opening a normal box. One thing I will say about Topps that they also, and Panini also has that. So Panini is, I probably will do Panini this year for soccer, because they'll probably, if it's the new, Topps Chrome or even Finest, I will definitely take advantage of that. Topps and Panini both do, these redemption boxes now that they do have. So that's one thing that they also, is really good. You go on the website for Topps, schedule a time, and you hand in your expired redemptions, right? Or you hand in your redemptions that haven't been fulfilled yet, right? That you're still waiting on. You give it to them. They'll say pick a number 1 through 100 of these boxes, right? You pick, and you're gonna get a good card out of this. The value from what they were saying last year was anywhere from 200 to 10,000, right? Which is crazy. You have a redemption, you could get $10,000 card. Right, they had an Ohtani rookie auto in there, which is crazy, right? So
Trout autos,
Panini has the Black Box 101. So there's a ton of things that, Topps, Panini, and all these other stuff that we're probably not even mentioning, that they do at the National that you could take advantage of, and you can make a good amount of money on it, and you can pull an unbelievable card. All right, one last thing we're going to touch on is, for you guys, on how, Chicago in 2022 and even Cleveland, what do we want to see to improve in this year's National, and how are they going to do that, and what would you like to see?
Well, starters, they need to make sure that AC works this year.
Oh,
I remember the first 2 days the AC was down. It was the worst thing ever.
AC broke in the first day.
Yeah.
We
were
and the amount of people that were there,
It was
they're all sweating because it was 100 degrees in there, and you're all sweating. So I was like dying of heat.
Yeah,
but eventually they fixed it. But yeah, that was 100.
Yeah. Definitely some more food options, hopefully.
Yeah. So they had that one Starbucks, and then some concession stand. That's it. They don't really have much.
And then last thing is more personal preference, but I feel like they had a little bit too much vintage stuff. Mm-hmm. At least for me, I don't look at vintage at all, so I think they can kind of get rid of like a benefit because they had a lot of vintage.
Well, I kind of like what they did. Like they kind of have vintage in a section.
Yeah, I like how they didn't mix the sections.
But then when you kind of go into like that back section they had a lot of the modern just
that was
all there. So I kind of like, I don't know if that was intentional now, but I kind of like that. Or like right when you walked in, there was a ton of vintage. Then once you worked your way to the back, that's all you saw modern. So do like one thing that I do want to say from Chicago is our hotel's gonna be better.
Yeah.
That's a tip. I would say, if you're going next year, right, and you're 100% going, I would be getting like hotels for Chicago because it's in Chicago for the next 3 years. I'd be getting hotels and airfare quick just because in Chicago it doesn't make a big difference, but it's really cool if you get these certain amount of hotels because like we saw, there was trade nights in hotels that we went to until 2 in the morning. Mm-hmm. Like certain hotels, that's what you're gonna get. Our hotel last time didn't have that, which was whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not a big difference, but if you're someone who really wants that, like we have the hotel that connects to the convention center, so you're not Uber. But I would definitely say that's a big thing to get stuff early so for Chicago because you could take advantage of just the minor stuff that it offers. What do you think?
I definitely think that kind of like what you said, accessibility is going to be a really big thing. AC working, Wi-Fi, that's always a big thing for looking at concerts and stuff.
Wi-Fi was alright.
It was kind of bad in Cleveland last year, but
no matter where you were in the building.
Yeah, Wi-Fi. To be honest, some improvements to the VIP lounge would be nice.
Yeah.
Last year's in Cleveland, it was very good. I'd actually say that was one of the better parts
Chicago,
of the show.
That's the one thing about Chicago. When you buy the VIP pass, it usually comes with, like the lounge, which is very necessary for Chicago because it's so big that they use up every, foot of it with tables. There's no section to sit down, like just on the show floor, so you can't just sit down. So you just walk by and people are sitting on the floor, right? So that's where I think the lounge is big because you could just walk into the lounge and finally get to sit down. But the lounge wasn't as big. I think it's gonna be the exact same. So it's okay. But I would definitely say if you could get the VIP, definitely get it just because it gives you the ability to sit down and relax, which is definitely a big part if you're going for 3 days.
Yeah.
All that. Now Nate, I'm gonna ask you a question on first time, right? And you've been to a lot and you've experienced. What do you want to see out of this national to make it the best card show you've been to?
The best card show. I feel like the trade night is going to be a really important aspect for me because I think Dallas, FanFest, they were great shows, but one thing kind of lacked, maybe not Dallas part, but FanFest was maybe like a trade night. And when I say trade night, I mean like more interactive and the people at the show that you might not necessarily see at the show. So maybe at the show you see interact with a lot of dealers, and then at trade night, there's a bunch of people that you never see before. And then there's a whole new collection of cards that you may never have seen. And I think that's a very important
Well,
aspect.
that's what's really cool is
Yeah.
because even if you're flipping, but like if we're buying for like our PC, right, and we see like soccer right at this show, right, and you're looking at everyone's case. I remember last year, we were walking around and people are just at a table, just showing off like all their stuff, trying to make deals with other people, and we're looking at it, and it's like high-end soccer, and we're like, wow. I remember that guy. I was like, man, I want to wait for him just to like look at it and see if I want to buy anything. Like, but that's what's cool about it because like if you're flipping, you don't get the 70% the dealers offer, which is really annoying. Like you're more likely to even make a trade. That's why I like to say if like you have stuff to sell, you're definitely bringing it just because you're probably gonna get a good trade offer. You're gonna find something you like, and you could do a trade deal. If not, you're gonna get cash for it, and you're gonna get 80, 85, 90%, depending on the car, 95% of comps, depending on the high end. So yeah, I definitely do think that's big for the nationals, trades, and just the show in general.
I mean, trade night, that's probably one of the coolest parts of the show, at least for me, in my opinion, because not only do you kind of get a break from those dealers who are kind of going like, oh, I'll give you 70, 80%. You're going and talking to people who they didn't pay for, they paid for tickets to actually go to the show, but they didn't pay all this money so they could set up a table and they have to make a profit. They're kind of just saying, all right, like, what do you have? Yeah, this is my stuff. You interested? And it's really cool because you see all these people walking around the show with these big cases. And then trade night, you get to see what's actually in those cases. And to be honest, it could be sometimes, some nights, like let's say you have a bad day at the show, go to trade night could be a better time at trade night than the show.
So, last thing I do want to say is go through each person and say, what's your plan for the national? What are you trying to do? Who's one player you're looking to buy? And what are you looking to accomplish there?
I'm buying 2 players. The first player I'm buying is Neymar. And Neymar is a long-term hold for me because he's so cheap right now, but in the World Cup, he's Brazil's captain. He's their number 1 player. And when 2026 comes, everyone's going to go crazy for Neymar's. And then the next player is Jaden Daniels.
Wow.
After that Black Friday sale, his prices are going even more crazy than they
So do you think that's a good time to buy or to sell if you did have? Because
I think
you're buying into that.
Buy and sell. You could. It's just the turnaround time has to be there. You can't hold the Daniels. You gotta make sure you turn around the Daniels really fast.
100%.
For me, a big player I'm definitely buying is Bobby Jr. I've been building a bit of a PC of him over the past year and a half, and I'm just a big fan of his, and I'm just gonna keep trying to build that. And then another player I'm definitely gonna be buying is CeeDee Lamb. I'm a big Cowboy fan. You guys are big Cowboy fans. Guy's a stud, top 3 receiver in the league. So I'm just gonna definitely be buying a lot of him.
For me, I would say, for people who see my collection know what I buy at card shows, I more focus on GOATs. I think, personally, long-term, it will have a better long-term, be a better long-term investment. I wouldn't say it's better flip, just because, some people can make a good amount, like flipping the short-term, like 2 weeks in the NFL season. But long-term, I would say, and I've seen it in some of my cards already, of, especially that one over there, that it's gone up a ton just off since when I bought it. And it's like, it's not like, a huge margin, but it's like drastically increasing just because of the card and how much people want it. So I would say for me, I'm going to keep focusing on the GOATs. For soccer, definitely a lot of Messi. That's my guy. I would keep buying Messi. Autos, rookies. Try to get them all, depending on
the price.
Yeah, depending on how much people are taxing him and increasing him. And I would say, just look at, Jordan's, Tom Brady's, Mickey Mantle's, all the GOATs. That's what I would do.
Probably we spend most of my money at the SoCo Expo.
Nice.
Definitely going to be buying a nice Pedri card, personal favorite player. Probably going to get another Messi for my PC, just because big Barca fan, so need to have that in there. then I'm also probably gonna do the silver packs this year.
Yeah.
It's just that last year was the Merlin box.
Yeah.
It was like the old Merlin.
It was
like,
the old Merlin without your mall, so it was like
it wasn't that good of a box, so that's why I didn't do it.
yeah, because there's no value in the box.
Also, I'm pretty sure the silver pack, it wasn't just soccer in it. I think it was like a mixed sport for that one.
Mhm.
That we got.
Gotcha. So this will conclude our nationals video. We'll all be at the nationals, so I'm sure we'll definitely get some videos of us walking around at the show, pick up. So you'll get all that content. Hopefully you guys learned something or took some tips into consideration. See you in the next one.
Thank you.